Imagine that this folder is a dimensional plane. Now, assuming that it is no height and no depth, what would this mean? It would mean that it's a one-dimensional world.
He appeared once, a high school kid with a webcam and a mind far beyond his years. In a dimly lit room, he spoke calmly about the fourth dimension.
There's only one object in the universe, a theoretically endless void of space, and it cannot move.
Unraveling a mystery that baffled even adults. Millions watched in awe, and then he vanished. No uploads, no trace, just silence. Years later, he re-emerged, older, stranger, with a message that left viewers uneasy. Who was this boy? And what did he discover in the space between worlds? The boy who saw beyond 3 dimensions. When the YouTube video titled Fourth Dimension Explained by a High School Student first appeared in 2010, few expected it to become a cornerstone of early internet legend. The thumbnail was simple: a teenager in a hoodie, sitting in his bedroom, speaking directly into the camera. Yet, within minutes of watching, you realized something uncanny was happening. This wasn't your typical school project. The boy, who came to be known only as XKD Hat Guy, wasn't reading off notes. He was teaching and somehow making the incomprehensible sound almost human. He talked about flatland, a 2-dimensional world whose inhabitants couldn't perceive the 3rd dimension, and then turned the mirror on us. We might just be the flatlanders of a higher reality, he said. The simplicity of that line stuck. The way he compared our 3D world to something greater, something we could never see, felt like both a science lesson and a philosophical revelation. His delivery was calm, almost detached, like he had already accepted a truth the rest of us were struggling to grasp. The video spread like wildfire. Science forums called him the next Carl Sagan. Others found his explanation too clear to be casual. Teachers used his video in classrooms. YouTube recommended it to millions. Yet as fast as his fame grew, so did the mystery around him. Who was this teenager who could casually articulate what even graduate students found abstract? Some speculated he was connected to XKCD, the popular webcomic known for witty science jokes, hence the name XKCD Hat Guy. Others believed he was simply a prodigy, a young mind who understood multidimensional theory intuitively. His username, his hat, his calm tone, all became identifiers of a legend in the making. Then, as if pulled into the very world he described, he disappeared. Months passed, then years. His channel went silent. No updates, no social media, no digital trace. Fans began theorizing. Some said he'd gone to college under a different name. Others, in a mix of humor and obsession, claimed the 4th dimension took him. On Reddit, entire threads blossomed. Where did the 4th dimension kid go? Anyone else think his video was too good? It's like he vanished into his own theory. One Redditor pointed out small inconsistencies, the background posters, the date on his account, as if decoding hidden clues. Others shared eerie coincidences, messages sent from abandoned accounts, channels that briefly reactivated only to go dark again. Over time, XKCD Hat Guy evolved from a creator into a myth. By 2019, whispers of a return surfaced. A new video appeared, claiming to be him. The man in the frame looked older, his tone slower. He spoke about losing access to his old account, about struggling with things inside my head, and how the internet had turned him into something he never intended to be. It was heartfelt, maybe too heartfelt. Some believed him immediately. Others called it an imitation. That's not the same guy, one user wrote. The cadence is different. The eyes are different. Regardless of who was behind it, the video revived interest in his original message. Was the 4th dimension just a metaphor all along? For perception, for time, for mental space? Whether he was real, fake, or somewhere in between, his story began to represent something larger than science. A reflection of our own obsession with understanding what lies beyond human comprehension. He had shown us the shape of something we couldn't see, and then disappeared into it. But before we can understand the myth that followed, we need to grasp the idea that started it all. What exactly is the fourth dimension, and why did this boy's explanation feel so profound? The fourth dimension: theories, possibilities, and paradoxes. We have to confront the idea that started it all, the fourth dimension itself.
We would have a four-dimensional world, but what exactly is a fourth dimension? In order to understand this, we need to understand
What made this teenager's explanation so captivating wasn't just his confidence, but how he made one of the most complex concepts in science sound intuitive, almost personal. What exactly is the fourth dimension? And why has it fascinated thinkers, dreamers, and physicists for more than a century? To start, the notion of dimensions isn't some fringe theory. It's one of the foundations of how we understand space and time. We live, move, and build in three dimensions: length, width, and height. But imagine a world that only has two. That was the thought experiment at the heart of Edwin A. Abbott's 1884 novella, Flatland, a romance of many dimensions. In Flatland, the characters are geometric shapes, squares, circles, triangles, trapped in a perfectly flat world. They can move forward, backward, left, or right, but up doesn't exist for them. To them, the concept of height is as ungraspable as a fourth spatial direction is to us. When XKCD8 Hat Guy described this, he invited his viewers to step into Flatland. Now imagine, he said, if something from the third dimension entered their world, they'd see only slices of it, shadows moving through their reality. Then he flipped the idea. What if our universe is Flatland to a higher dimension? What if beings from the fourth dimension move through our world, unseen except by the shadows they cast? This was the spark that lit the fascination. He wasn't lecturing physics. He was telling a story about perspective, about our limits as perceivers. It was science explained through empathy. In traditional science, the fourth dimension has two common interpretations. The first is time, Einstein's groundbreaking addition to space in his theory of relativity. In that model, space and time aren't separate entities, but part of a single continuum called space-time. Every object, every moment, exists within this four-dimensional fabric. When the boy referenced movement through time as we move through space, he was knowingly or not echoing Einstein's model. Einstein once said, "The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." That quote fits eerily well with how the viral boy framed his explanation. He wasn't describing equations or tensor fields. He was suggesting that maybe our inability to see time as a dimension doesn't mean it's not there. We just experience it differently, moment by moment, instead of all at once. But beyond Einstein, there's another way to think about the fourth dimension, a spatial dimension beyond the three we know. Mathematicians have played with this concept for centuries. You can think of a tesseract, the four-dimensional version of a cube. A line, 1D, becomes a square, 2D. A square extruded becomes a cube, 3D. And a cube extruded through a fourth spatial axis becomes a tesseract, 4D. You can't visualize it directly, but you can see its shadow, just as a cube's shadow is a square. Artists, game designers, and physicists have tried to illustrate this. Films like Interstellar and Doctor Strange use surreal visuals to show higher dimensional spaces, folding and looping, where time and space intertwine. In Interstellar, Cooper floating in the Tesseract scene is a cinematic attempt to imagine what moving in four spatial dimensions might feel like. Time laid out as a physical landscape. For scientists, though, the fourth dimension isn't just sci-fi spectacle. It's a serious, if abstract, framework that could explain the hidden mechanics of the universe. In the 20s, Theodore Kaluza proposed that gravity and electromagnetism could be unified by adding an extra dimension to space-time. Later, Oscar Klein suggested that maybe this extra dimension is real, but so small and compact we can't perceive it, rolled up within every point in space. These ideas would later evolve into string theory, which posits not four, but up to 11 dimensions. The funny part? The boy's video, while casual, paralleled this intuition. He wasn't citing string theorists or writing equations, but the essence of what he said, about hidden directions beyond our perception, lines up eerily well with what modern theoretical physicists still discuss today. That's part of why the video resonated. It was technically naive, but philosophically accurate. He wasn't wrong. He was just using the language of imagination instead of math. But the fourth dimension isn't just a scientific puzzle, it's a philosophical one. For some, it represents freedom from constraint. If you could step into the fourth dimension, you could escape locked rooms, see all sides of an object at once, or even move backward and forward in time. Mystics and metaphysicians have interpreted it as the realm of souls or consciousness, something beyond physical limits. Even artists like Salvador Dali explored the concept. His painting Corpus Hypercubus portrays Christ on a tesseract cross, symbolizing divine transcendence through higher dimensions. So while physicists talk about mathematical models, ordinary people, including that young YouTuber, intuitively connect it with meaning.
Then it would be able to move up, down, left, right, and anywhere else in between. And a two-dimensional world is comprised.
It's not just another axis. It's a metaphor for the unknown, the invisible forces shaping our lives. Maybe that's why his explanation struck such a chord. It spoke to curiosity, not calculation. Meanwhile, online discussions about his interpretation took their own shape. Some Redditors praised how he made it click without ever mentioning math. Others pointed out that his use of flatland missed the nuances of relativity, calling it philosophy, not physics. But that didn't seem to matter. As one user wrote, he explained what textbooks couldn't. He made you feel the fourth dimension. In science forums, a few skeptics argued that his explanation confused metaphors with models. Yet even they admitted it was powerful communication. It got people thinking, and that's where the magic lies. The boy wasn't trying to prove anything. He was inviting others to imagine. The legacy of his explanation is how it blurred the line between understanding and wonder. It reminded people that science isn't always about knowing, it's about asking better questions. The beauty of his approach was that it made the fourth dimension feel possible, not in a strict mathematical sense, but emotionally, even spiritually. He left people wondering if perhaps reality really does extend beyond what we can perceive. And that's what keeps the fourth dimension alive in pop culture, in theory, and in myth. It's a space where science meets imagination. In the end, his viral explanation did more than simplify a complex concept. It opened a gateway. It made the abstract feel personal. Whether we think of it as time, space, or something spiritual, the fourth dimension remains a mirror, reflecting both our scientific hunger and our human desire to understand what lies beyond sight. But curiosity always has a cost. The more people tried to decode his words, the more his absence became part of the mystery. And when he finally returned, his message wasn't about physics anymore, it was about something far more unsettling. The vanishing and the haunting message. Let's say he does really make sense, after all. His language was poetic, but not pretentious, grounded in everyday comparisons that made you feel like the impossible might actually make sense for a second. What set him apart was his tone.
Imagine that this folder is a dimensional plane. Now, assuming that it is no height and no depth,
He wasn't positioning himself as a genius. He spoke like a friend who had stumbled upon something strange and couldn't stop thinking about it. That humility made his insights feel even more real. When viewers asked questions in the comments, so does that mean ghosts are 4D beings? Or could deja vu be us crossing time like a dimension? He replied thoughtfully, almost philosophically, never dismissing anyone's idea. Maybe, he'd write, it's not about what's real, but what we can perceive. This attitude fueled the viral discussion on Reddit and YouTube alike. Threads grew long and speculative, debating whether he was a student, a genius, or just an artist playing with deep concepts. Some claimed he was linked to a niche academic circle that blended quantum theory with phenomenology. Others said he was just a kid with too much time and a webcam. The mystery only deepened after his account went dormant. No uploads, no replies, nothing. Around that time, the topic of the fourth dimension itself started trending again across science communities and pop culture. TikTok edits used his clips to dramatize theories of parallel worlds. Science YouTubers referenced his explanations when trying to describe space-time visually. Even physics hobbyists began uploading 4D renderings of tesseracts titled "As the Boy Said." It was clear his simple framing had reignited a long-dormant fascination with higher dimensions. At the heart of it all is this question: why does the fourth dimension feel like the key to something bigger? For scientists, it's about unifying physical laws. For artists and dreamers, it's about breaking boundaries of perception. For the viral boy, it was both. He blurred the line between science and wonder, between fact and faith in the unseen. Einstein's space-time already gave us a fourth coordinate, time, but theories since have expanded the idea into unseen spatial axes. String theory, M theory, and other advanced frameworks propose that the fabric of the universe may exist in anywhere from 10 to 11 dimensions, most curled up so tightly we can't perceive them. To many, that makes the boy's analogies prophetic in hindsight. He may not have used academic language, but his message aligned with where modern physics was already heading, that there's more reality than our senses reveal. But the conversation didn't stay purely scientific. As weeks passed, discussions turned increasingly existential. If our perception is limited to 3 dimensions, could consciousness itself be a glimpse into the fourth? Some even connected his ideas to near-death experiences or altered states of awareness, claiming that those might be momentary shifts beyond 3D space. Whether or not one believes it, these interpretations showed how his explanation transcended science. It became a shared language for curiosity about existence. This blend of physics, philosophy, and speculation gave his persona an almost mythic quality online. He wasn't just a kid who talked about the fourth dimension. He became a kind of digital ghost storyteller for a generation raised on quantum videos and cosmic memes. He made abstract theory feel alive. And yet, even as his ideas spread, something about him remained unsettling. His delivery had an odd calmness, like someone who'd seen too much. It wasn't performative, it was serene, detached, almost eerie. Maybe that's why, when he disappeared, people didn't just shrug it off. They wondered if he'd found what he was talking about. Theories flooded Reddit. Some thought he'd been doxxed and decided to vanish. Others speculated he was part of an ARG alternate reality game. A few darker takes claimed his disappearance was intentional, that he'd stepped out of our dimensional reality, metaphorically or otherwise. One cryptic post on r/glitch_in the Matrix read, "He said he'd show us the way once he could see all sides of time." It was dismissed as a hoax, but later, when the account reappeared years later with a new video, those words resurfaced like prophecy. The boy who once explained the fourth dimension had transformed from a viral clip into a legend, part philosopher, part mystery, part myth. And the best part? He hadn't even returned yet in the timeline of our story. His reappearance was still to come, and no one could predict what kind of haunting message he'd bring back with him. Before we can even dream about a fourth dimension, we have to look closer at the 3 we already inhabit because, let's be honest, even those are more mind-bending than they seem. We talk about them every day without realizing how strange they really are. The 3 dimensions. 3-dimensional space sounds dull, like something you scribble in a math notebook, but it's literally the invisible stage where every second of your life unfolds. Let's start simple. The first dimension is a line, pure length, no thickness, no width. It's an idea more than a thing, something you can only imagine. The second dimension adds width. Now we get shapes, squares, triangles, circles, a flat world. Everything exists on a single plane. like characters trapped inside a piece of paper. They can't look up or down because those directions simply don't exist to them. Add a third dimension, depth, and suddenly the universe explodes into richness. Cubes, spheres, mountains, bodies, clouds, all spring into being. You can now move forward, back, side to side, up and down. It feels natural, but that's only because we've never known anything else. Our eyes, our sense of balance, even how we build and design everything, all are wired to navigate this three-dimensional cage. If you were born in a 2D world, you'd never even suspect a third direction existed. You'd draw your life, not live in volume. The same is true for us. Maybe there's another layer beyond ours, but we're simply unequipped to see it. Think about it this way. When you drop a shadow puppet on the wall, that flat silhouette is a 2D projection of your 3D hand. Now imagine your entire life is someone else's shadow. Your three-dimensional body is the projection of something higher. That's the leap the fourth dimension boy wanted people to consider. In physics, though, these three dimensions aren't just philosophical, they're measurable. Every object, from an apple to an asteroid, exists within the coordinates x, y, and z. You can describe where something is by saying how far it extends in those three directions. It's geometry turned reality. If you move an inch, you've changed one coordinate in this grand 3D grid of existence. But here's where it gets trippy. These dimensions don't just describe space, they also define limits. You can move through them freely, but you can't step outside them. You're trapped inside your own coordinate system. You can't look at the universe from above, like a god viewing a model. You're a part of the model itself. Even light, the fastest thing we know, travels along this 3D fabric, unable to peek beyond it. And yet, for something that feels so absolute, our experience of 3D space is shockingly fragile. Take away our eyes, or even distort our depth perception, and the illusion collapses. The brain works overtime to stitch together a believable world from flat images. Technically, your retinas only see in 2 dimensions. Your mind does the heavy lifting to make it feel like 3. Reality, it turns out, is a reconstruction. You don't live in 3D, you interpret it. That brings us to one of the most fascinating realizations in science. 3D space might be a projection itself. Physicists call this the holographic principle, the idea that our three-dimensional universe could be like a hologram, where all the information actually lives on a 2-dimensional surface somewhere else. It sounds absurd, but it's mathematically consistent with theories of quantum gravity and black holes. So imagine that. Everything you touch and see might be data, projected like a cosmic movie. You're not in a world. You are part of an incredibly convincing simulation of one. That doesn't mean we're living in the Matrix, though the comparison is tempting, but it does mean that 3D reality may not be as fundamental as it feels. It might just be the best version our senses can process, and yet we navigate it flawlessly. From building skyscrapers to launching satellites, we've learned to dance inside these 3 dimensions with stunning precision. Architecture, engineering, and virtual reality all rely on our ability to manipulate space. Even something as simple as playing catch is a 3-dimensional ballet. Your brain instantly calculates the arc of a flying ball through gravity and time. But this dance hides a paradox. If you could pause time, you'd realize that everything around you, every movement, every curve, is frozen geometry. The dynamic flow of life is actually a sequence of still 3D snapshots. That's why some physicists say the passage of time isn't a movement through the 3rd dimension, it's a movement through the 4th, which, again, circles us back to the boy's obsession. There's another angle to understanding our dimensions. They define not just where things exist, but what's possible. In a 2D world, circles can trap you forever. There's no above to escape through. In 3D, you can just step over. Similarly, some problems in our universe might only make sense if we could step into the next level. Gravity, dark matter, even the nature of consciousness, all could be the shadows of higher dimensional processes. To test this, Scientists and mathematicians have built mental bridges between dimensions. One of the most famous is the tesseract, the 4D version of a cube. You can't draw it fully, but you can show its 3D shadow, a cube inside another cube, connected by lines that warp your sense of perspective. It's like peeking at the impossible from the corner of your eye. And here's the irony. Even though we live in 3D, most of our technology reduces it back to 2D. We scroll through flat screens, watch movies projected on walls, and communicate through images without depth. It's almost poetic. Our 3D selves are obsessed with flattening reality again, compressing the infinite into the viewable. Maybe that's why the idea of a fourth dimension feels so freeing. It promises something bigger, something beyond the glass. But let's take a step back. Why do we even call these dimensions? Because they're the independent directions you can move without overlapping others. Move left or right, x-axis, forward or back, y-axis, up or down, z-axis. Each new direction adds more freedom. The first dimension gives you a line. The second gives you an area. The third gives you volume. Every jump adds an unimaginable layer of complexity. Mathematically, you can keep adding as many as you like. A 5-dimensional cube, a 10-dimensional sphere, it all works in equations, even if our brains can't picture it. That's the beauty of abstraction. Math can imagine what our senses can't. Yet, despite that freedom, the 3 we know are enough to make the universe breathtakingly complex. Every galaxy, storm, heartbeat, and melody is just movement through those 3 directions, repeated endlessly in patterns. The cosmos is a 3D playground, structured but infinite, familiar yet incomprehensible. Still, for all its beauty, 3-dimensional life comes with a built-in blind spot. We can't see beyond surfaces. We can't perceive all sides of an object at once. We rely on light bouncing off matter, and even that light only shows what faces us. There's always a hidden side, something just out of view. Maybe that's why the idea of another dimension feels less like fantasy and more like intuition. Deep down, we know we're only seeing part of the picture. So when the boy spoke about the 4th dimension, he wasn't just expanding math, he was expanding awareness. He was saying, what if our entire reality is just a shadow of something larger? It's a question that's haunted philosophers, physicists, and dreamers alike. 3 dimensions. That's our home turf. We build, breathe, and believe inside them. But as soon as we start questioning their edges, how they form, why they exist, what they hide, we can't help but look toward the next step. Because if we've learned anything from Flatland, from Einstein, from art, from that mysterious boy, it's this. The moment you think you understand space, it opens another door. And what lies beyond that door might not just change how we see the universe, it might change how we see ourselves. The dimension within us. If the first 3 dimensions describe the physical world around us, then the next one might be hiding inside us. The 4th dimension isn't always out there in some cosmic hallway. It could be woven into how we think, remember, and perceive. Maybe the boundary between the physical and the mental is thinner than we realize. Think about how you experience time. You can't see it, but you feel it stretch and shrink depending on what you're doing. An hour in traffic feels longer than an hour with someone you love. Physics tells us that time is a dimension, mathematically as real as height or depth, but our minds bend it constantly. That's because our consciousness doesn't just move through time, it shapes it. Neuroscientists have even suggested that the brain builds its own mental space using dimensions of thought. Memories exist not as linear points, but as layered constructs, arranged in ways that let you jump instantly between moments. Close your eyes, and in a second you can leap from childhood to tomorrow's worries, crossing years as effortlessly as stepping across a room. That's not magic, that's higher dimensional thinking. Some psychologists go further, proposing that human awareness is our brain's way of peeking into another level of organization. We can't perceive the 4th dimension directly, but maybe consciousness is what happens when a 3D being starts interacting with it.
It makes sense after all. We can only define up to 3 directions, each at a right angle to each other.
The patterns we call emotion, memory, and imagination might be our limited experience of that deeper geometry. This would explain why so many cultures describe intuition, dreams, or spiritual experiences as seeing beyond. What if they're not metaphors? What if they're brief, messy glimpses of higher-order connections our senses usually filter out? The dimension within might not be a place. It could be a capacity, a part of us that recognizes when something doesn't fit neatly inside length, width, and height. Even physics doesn't rule this out completely. Quantum theory already blurs the line between observer and observed. Particles change behavior when we look at them, as if awareness itself nudges reality. To some scientists, that's just measurement interference. To others, it hints that consciousness might be stitched into the structure of space and time. Maybe our thoughts ripple ever so slightly into that fourth direction. And that brings us back to the boy. When he spoke about seeing all sides of time, maybe he wasn't being cryptic. Maybe he was describing a state of perception that touches that inner dimension, a way of awareness that's not linear, not bound by before or after. Perhaps that's what his haunting message meant. The fourth dimension might not just be a realm of physics.
So now that that's cleared up, what would 4-dimensional space be like?
It could be the unseen landscape of the mind, the place where matter and meaning intersect. If that's true, then maybe we don't need to travel anywhere to find it. Maybe it's been inside us all along. And that boy who once unraveled the mystery of the fourth dimension didn't just vanish into rumor, he became it. His haunting message wasn't about physics. It was about perception.
You cannot even imagine what a tesseract looks like. You cannot physically, you cannot in your mind.
Maybe the fourth dimension isn't a place to find, but a truth to remember. Reality is bigger than we can ever see. Subscribe for more stories beyond the visible. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up if you liked the video.